It really started in 1984 with a small equipment grant from the Apple Education Foundation that gave us 25 PCs and a very small grant, $250 each, to install telephones in the classrooms of teachers who would be participating. And we started right here in this driveway, where we said everybody who would like to be a part of this network that we're inventing, please show up, and the first 25 who show up will get a computer and we'll get a $250 grant to get started. And then we'll figure out what we're going to do to keep in touch. There were a number of people on the faculty who worked hard to make this happen, including James Britton and Nancy Martin from England, Ken McCrory, some distinguished literature and writing teachers who said we need a way to stay in touch. We want to continue discussions that have come here. And these teachers had a very deep belief in the social construction of written language. So the idea was to see, we did not know about the limitations of the technology, that we would try to figure out if we could find a space for conversations about literature, about issues, about ideas that we could sustain over time. So it had both modest and deeply theorized and felt notions behind what we were doing. Tom McKenna, a Middlebury graduate and a Breadloaf graduate who is now BLTN's Director of Communications, with Lucy Maddox, several other members of the faculty, and a number of Breadloaf teachers who stuck with us till this day, did the initial work. Not only did the work, they looked at it and they wrote about it, and they shaped what finally led to some major grants, beginning with support from the Wallace Foundation. But our beginnings were small, and they were firmly grounded literally in the Breadloaf program itself. So it's wonderful to think back about how Breadloaf has evolved since those modest beginnings. It's evolved over the years to include not just public school teachers who receive small grants and Middlebury financial aid to come here, but to include every member of the Breadloaf community. That means that we might have 100 teachers at any one time participating actively in collaborative projects that are facilitated by increasingly easy to access free technology. We like to think that the core of teachers who are members of the Breadloaf Teacher Network now are among the country's foremost experts on what it means to use social media in educational context in ethical and responsible ways, and certainly in ways that are linked to a rigorous academic program. We like to think that if we do our job well enough, we don't want to have 1 million members of the Breadloaf. We want to do our work so well that we provide a model for other groups and organizations. Social networks are everywhere, but we don't have many ways to look at those and understand the impact they have on teachers and students and the problems that are involved. And we like to think that Breadloaf Teacher Network will affect policy at a national level when it comes to social networks and education, and that will affect the lives of students and teachers at a local level. We're not a network that charges. It's free, open access to all its members. We don't have a program that people buy. Teachers are at the center of this network, and they develop and design the work that goes on within it. So it's the very opposite from scripted programs that are given to teachers to guide their teaching. It's an invitation for these teachers to work collaboratively, to create and describe and evaluate the work they're doing in their classrooms. If you looked at the work Breadloaf does, and it's several hundred publications by and about Breadloaf Teacher Network and its program, and then you looked at commercial programs and policies, you certainly wouldn't think that Breadloaf has had an impact on what's happening in schools. It's not reflected in mandated testing, but we do, and it's not reflected, say, very much in the Common Core curriculum. But if you look at the professional literature and at the way Breadloaf work is cited, you'll find it's had a profound effect. Several years ago, a major publication identified the Breadloaf Teacher Network as one of the 5 most important resources for the teaching of literature and writing in the country. A couple of years ago, a wonderful publication called Taking an Inquiry Stance out of Penn identified the Breadloaf Teacher Network as a place where the kind of reflective teacher-based research was started and has been maintained. So the most telling example to me is the extent to which Breadloaf Teacher Network teachers are leaders at local, national, and international levels. They serve on commissions, they develop curriculum for their districts and their states. They are called upon as experts, and they are advocates for teachers and students. The Breadloaf Teacher Network would have no reason or way to exist unless it were embedded in the Breadloaf School of English program. And I might add that we have the advantage of Middlebury College's superb resources, and that as we have tried to develop along with the times with digital teaching and learning, it's been the relationship with Middlebury College and that support that's made it possible. I mean, one of the finest, constantly renewing, revising, and updating the services they offer their faculty and students. We want to evaluate Breadloaf Teacher Network by looking at the gold standard that's set for professional development and seeing how close we are to meeting that. The big question in social network is, how do you sustain them? You can start them. They're literally 100 and 1,000 social networks. You can start them, but how do you sustain them? So looking at membership over time to see who sticks with us and how is one of our great benchmarks for looking at whether we're doing a job that teachers find useful. It's a lot of work to belong to the Breadloaf Teacher Network. If I look back at funded teachers since 1993, and we had 300 or 400 teachers who were funded over a long period of time, I would say that from 30 to 40% have remained active. And when I say active, I mean they are leaders, they are online, they're working with other teachers. When I look at the descriptions of the sustainability of other professional networks, that is absolutely remarkable. Sustaining a network with members who stick to it for over 2 or 3 years is a very difficult task. Breadloaf's here, so we don't disappear. This is the 93rd year of the Breadloaf School of English, and BLTN is relatively new, even if I go back to 1984. So that's interesting, isn't it? I think that's a question that most outsiders ask us. How do you sustain a network? It's easy to start one, especially if you have a grant. But how do you maintain it and keep it going? If we had a motto, it would be that children are resources to be developed, not problems to be solved. The Breadloaf Teacher Network teachers, I think, generally view young people and children as their allies and partners when it comes to school change, social change, and classroom practice. So one of the things we've learned from Andover Breadloaf is that because they systematically enact this view that young people who began working with them when they were in the 4th grade and who've been working with them now for 5 years are leading professional education workshops in their schools and communities and in community organizations. So as the digital possibilities become much more apparent and powerful, we are banking on the collective involvement of large numbers of children in improving their own education in communities to really change things in a big way. So we believe in the power of millennials, especially when they're guided by wonderful mentors and teachers to make things happen. There are more young people out there in schools than there are teachers. We count on them to be our allies, to work with us, and not to be clients that are served. And it's the most powerful, engaging idea on earth. So I love to see these young people who come out on a beautiful Saturday, work all day, write poetry, read poetry, help others do this, and then say, I can do this, I want to do this myself next time, I want to be a... Now I want those teachers to come back, I want those kids to come, stay in school. Beyond that, I want them to take advantage of all of the informal learning that there is in the world today. And then I want them to come back into the school and community as teachers and advocates. It's a wonderful, exciting time to be working with young people. What's revolutionary right now for us in Bread Love Teacher Network is that we have very comfortably, for a number of years, used a first-class network that we call BreadNet. And our teachers have used that when they were studying here, and they've taken it back to their classrooms. They have showed us that this is no longer adequate for what they can do. This summer, when teachers came here and let us see the range of platforms that they are using routinely in their classrooms, the notion of what BLTN could do quickly transformed. We have the wonderful free work of Middlebury College's LIS system to go to, but more than that, we have the example of gifted, responsible teachers using digital platforms in ways that we can begin to support and learn from. And it is not easy for an old lady to have to see what these are and appreciate them, but it's irresistible once you have teachers telling you, I am going to bring the digital literacies that my children bring to school into my classroom and use them as a force for teaching and learning. Everything opens up for you. So we are going to use the digital literacies that our teachers and young people bring and see where it leads us. And we are not naive. We've made all the mistakes. We know about the dangers. We don't think that this is a benign, we don't think this is some benign force out there, but we can be leaders in saying that every teacher and every child needs the tools that we'll call critical media literacy to let us look at these emerging developments and critique them and begin to understand which are dangerous and which we can exploit for good reason. It's a very complicated time. Complicated by the fact that teachers often don't have any say over the technology policies. But it doesn't matter anymore. The teachers and the students are using social networks constantly. It's a part of their lives. So being able to see what those mean and how they work, how they can extend and enrich education, is a pain in the neck for somebody my age, but we will do it, and teachers and students lead the way. Bread Loaf will always be a place. It's a haven. It's a place where we can get together face to face and sit under a tree and talk about ideas and language and educate the imagination.